Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about the Necromancer. I'm also going to do a video series on other classes as well. So in this video we're going to be talking about the abilities, the upgrades for the abilities, and other passives that the Necromancer and other classes will have. But in this video particularly, it's going to be about the Necromancer. Before we dive in, if you guys like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. That'd mean a lot to me. And let's just dive into it from here. Alright guys, so these are the basic abilities right here. This is where you're going to start with your skill tree. So first ability is going to be your Reap. Generate these. All of these are going to be where you generate your essence, but so we'll just skip that on all of them. But Reap is sweep an ethereal scythe in front of you, dealing 12% damage, hitting an enemy with Reap, increasing your damage reduction by 15% for 2 seconds. Now the next thing that would be an upgrade onto this would be if an enemy hit with Reap dies within number seconds, you gain plus number percent attack speed for number seconds. Now another upgrade, and I believe that these come down to where you would have to select one or the other. So it would be either Reap instantly kills targets below 5% life. This does not work on bosses or players. And then another one is Reap forms a corpse under the first enemy hit, can only occur every 5 seconds. Now as you can tell, I'm trying to click on the next one and I can't. So I believe with each ability you can only choose one or the other. So next is Decompose. Tear the flesh from an enemy, dealing 30% damage per second and forming a usable corpse with the flesh every 2.5 seconds. Now the first upgrade for Decompose is if an enemy dies while being decomposed, you gain 10 essence. Now the other upgrade between the two would be Decompose slows enemies by 30%. The other upgrade that you have to choose for if you don't want that one would be you and your minions deal times 10% increased damage to enemies who are being decomposed. Next we got Hemorrhage. Hemorrhage bursts an enemy's blood, dealing 25% damage. Hemorrhage has a 20% chance to form a blood orb. The first upgrade for Hemorrhage would be Enhanced Hemorrhage. After picking up a blood orb, your next Hemorrhage also deals damage to enemies around your target, granting 2 additional essence per enemy hit. Now the 2 upgrades that you would have to upgrade between would be Initiate's Hemorrhage, which Hemorrhage grants 0.64 base life number as Fortify each time it hits an enemy and has a 1.5 chance per enemy hit to fortify you for 100% base life. This is going to be really good for when if you want to be a melee necromancer. Fortify is a way to reduce damage. So the next upgrade would be Hemorrhage gains an additional 20% attack speed while healthy. Now while healthy, when you see that description and abilities, while healthy means above 80% life. So just if there's any future abilities in other classes or in this class, while healthy means above 80% life. Next ability is Bone Splinters. Fire 3 Bone Splinters, dealing 22.5% damage each. Each subsequent time an enemy is hit by the same cast of Bone Splinters, you gain 1 essence. The first upgrade is Bone Splinters has a 30% chance to fire 2 additional projectiles if cast while you have 50 or more essence. First upgrade between the split of upgrades would be Bone Splinters has a 20% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. Vulnerable is really good. Kind of really brings things out of builds. So when you see vulnerable, just know that's really good in other builds and other classes as well. The next upgrade would be hitting the same enemy at least number of times. I'm sure that comes down to how the upgrade or abilities or anything like that. Number of times the same cast as Bone Splitters grants plus number percent critical chance for number seconds. Now, when you upgrade to your core, I believe it only takes I think level 3. So level 3 you go to the core. So level 3 you get to the next area. So we're gonna have passives, and then we're gonna have the squares are abilities, circles are passives, diamonds are like, or I guess sideways squares are the upgrades for the abilities. So when you see circles, just know that those are passives. I'm gonna dive into those as well. So the first passive in the core area is your maximum essence is increased by 3. The next one is your core skills cost times 5% more essence, but deal times 10% more damage. The next passive is Hewed Flesh. Your damage has up to number percent chance to create a corpse at the target's location. This chance is doubled against bosses. Now we're gonna go with abilities. First ability is Bone Spear. Conjure a bone spear from the ground, dealing 85% damage and piercing through enemies. First upgrade for this is going to be Bone Spear breaks into number of shards when it is destroyed, dealing 10% damage each. The next upgrade is Bone Spear has a number percent chance, increased critical strike chance. If the Bone Spear's primary projectile critical strikes, it fires number of additional bone shards upon being destroyed. Alright, now next ability is Blood Lance. Throw a blood lance that lingers in an enemy for 3 seconds, dealing 45% damage to enemy and all other lanced enemies. The first upgrade for this is going to be Enhanced Blood Lance. Blood Lance pierces through enemies who are currently lanced, dealing 15% reduced damage to subsequent enemies after the first. So then we go off to the split. You have to choose between these, and the first split is after casting Blood Lance number of times, your next cast of Blood Lance is guaranteed to overpower and spawn blood orbs under the first enemy hit. The next split is while at least 2 enemies or a boss are infected by Blood Lance, you gain 10% increased attack speed, and Blood Lance's essence cost is reduced by 1. So this is really good for like boss battles, as you only need to really have the boss lanced, and this already increases your attack speed because of that. Next ability is Blood Surge. Draw blood from enemies, dealing 20% damage, and expel a blood nova, dealing 50% damage. Blood Surge's nova damage is increased by 10% per enemy drained up to 50%. So basically, if you have 5 enemies around you, this is going to do the most increased damage it will do. The next upgrade, or I should say the first upgrade for it, is Enhanced Blood Surge. Blood Surge heals you for 1 of your maximum life number when draining blood from enemies. If number of or more enemies are drawn from, then heal for an additional number for maximum life number. The numbers probably is depending on gear, ability stats. We really don't know at this point, but just know that when you see things like that, that's probably why. First split between the upgrades is Supernatural Blood Surge. Each time an enemy is hit by Blood Surge's Nova, you are fortified by number % base life number. While you have a fortify for over number % of your maximum life, Blood Surge deals times number % increased damage. The next split is Paranormal Blood Surge. If an enemy is damaged by Blood Surge's Nova while you are healthy, number healthy is above 80%, then gain 1 stack of Overwhelming Blood. When you have 5 stacks of Overwhelming Blood, your next Blood Surge is overpowered. The next ability is Blight. Unleash a concentrated blight that deals 30% damage and leaves behind a defiled area, dealing 80% damage over time. The next upgrade for Blight is Enhanced Blight. Blight slows enemies by 25%. The next split upgrade, first one, is you and your minions deal 10% increased damage to enemies within Blight. The next split ability is Paranormal Blight. Blight has a 10% chance to immobilize enemies for 2 seconds on impact. Then we go to the next ability, which is Sever. A specter of you charges forward and attacks with its scythe for 42% damage, then returns to you and attacks again for a number % damage. The next upgrade, first upgrade, is Enhanced Scythe, I'm sure. Yep, Enhanced Sever. Sever damages enemies along its path for a number % of its initial damage. Between the split, for the first split of passive, we're going to have Paranormal Sever, which every 4th cast of Sever makes enemies vulnerable for a number of seconds. Supernatural Sever. Sever deals number % increased damage for each minion you have upon cast. So this is between the two, is I'm guessing it's going to be like a casting kind of spec or a minion spec. So diving on, let me see how level you have to be. So 1, 2, 3. So we're gonna go probably to 7. So level 7, you get to this area here, and we're gonna go with passives first and then abilities. So first passive is Spiked Armor. Gain number of thorns. We really don't know the number yet, but I'm guessing based on the level, you would receive increased thorns. Next passive is going to be Skeleton Army Mastery. Increase the damage and life of your skeleton warriors by 15%. So the next passive is going to be Consume Corpse, guarantees 6 essence. And then the upgrade to that passive is you deal times 4% increased damage for 4 seconds after consuming a corpse. I don't know if this would stack. I don't think it would stack. I think it's just after you consume a corpse, you get that % bonus. Still, we're going to go with abilities first in this area. First ability is Bone Prison. Unearth a prison of bone with 12 life that surrounds the target area for 6 seconds. Now, I'm guessing that life will probably increase based on the level, but as you see, as I increase the level, I'm not seeing that increase. So the first passive is Enhanced Bone Prison. If an enemy is trapped by Bone Prison, gain 3 essence, plus an additional number per enemy trapped. Now, the next split passives is enemies inside Bone Prison are vulnerable. That's really good. Then the next passive is going to be Fortify for 1.5 base life for each enemy trapped in Bone Prison. This, when you see Fortify, that's really kind of going towards, I mean, it's not specially for, but it's going towards the whole melee spec of things, as Fortify is only really seen on Barbarians and Druids as well in their melee specs. Not saying that Fortify won't be good in other areas, but I'm just saying that's, when you see Fortify, that's kind of really hinting towards going that route. The next ability is going to be Corpse Explosion, fan favorite of everyone. Corpse Explosion, detonate a corpse dealing 75% damage to surrounding enemies. The first passive is going to be Corpse Explosion's radius is increased by 15%. Then with our split passives, we're going to go either Corpse Explosion becomes a darkness skill, and instead of exploding, releases a vile miasma dealing number percent shadow damage over number seconds. Now, this is going to change the damage type. Now, the one thing I worry about with Diablo 4 would be resistances. So they said they want respecs to be costly. So the one thing I worry about with respecs being so costly is if there's immunities later on, but we'll have to see. So the next passive will be Plague Corpse Explosion. Corpse explodes, dealing number percent increased damage to enemies that are slowed, stunned, or vulnerable. This damage bonus can stack. All right, now we're to our next area, which is Corruption, and you have to be level 15 to get to this area. And so that what that means is level 16, I believe, is when you could finally put a skill in these areas. So first passive is going to be Death's Embrace. Close enemies take times 2% more damage from you and deal 3% less damage. Once again, this is hinting towards a melee spec of Necromancer. Next passive is going to be Death's Reach. You deal times 4% increased damage to distant enemy. Next passive is Skeleton Mage Army. Increase the damage and life of your skeleton mages by 15%. Next passive is Amplify Damage. You deal times 3% increased damage to cursed enemies. Now we're moving on to abilities, and I'm guessing these are going to be your curses, which is what they are. So the first curse is Iron Maiden. Curse the target area. Enemies afflicted by Iron Maiden take 10% damage each time they deal direct damage. Then the next upgrade is Iron Maiden no longer costs essence, instead gain 5 essence for each enemy cursed. Does not work with enemies who are already cursed with Iron Maiden. So you can't like sit there and cast Iron Maiden on top of them over and over again to recharge your essence. The next split, or the first split passive, is Horrid Iron Maiden. When at least 3 enemies are afflicted by Iron Maiden, its damage is increased by 15%. The next passive split is Heal for 5% of maximum life when the enemy dies while afflicted by Iron Maiden. That's really good. So I would say Iron Maiden probably would be really strong into a Thorns melee build, like you could, or even just Thorns build overall. Then we got Curse the target area. Enemies afflicted by Decrepify are slowed by 5th and deal 25 less damage for 10 seconds. I wonder if there's supposed to be percentages by those. I'm guessing there's supposed to be percentages. So the first passive is going to be enemies hit while affected by Decrepify have up to 10% chance to stun them for 2 seconds. Now the next split between the two, the first one's going to be enemies hit while afflicted with Decrepify have up to 15% chance to reduce your active cooldowns by 1.5 seconds. The next passive is when your enemies hit an enemy afflicted by Decrepify below 10% life, they are instantly killed. Does not work on bosses. Alright, so to move on to the next area would be level 17.
Quick pause in the video, real quick, you guys. This is just me. Thank you guys so much for making it this far in the video. And if you guys like this kind of content and you'd like to see me do further content, whether I deep dive into Necromancer more or talk more about the other classes, please like and subscribe down below, as it really lets me know that I'm doing a good job. Let's continue.
And that means level 18 is when you could finally put an ability or a stat into these. And this is going to be your summoning tree. And as you can see with the summoning tree, it's a lot of passives and not a lot of abilities, because the Necromancer has Book of the Dead. And with Book of the Dead, they already from level 1 are already casting their summons. So when you see the summoning area, yes, they have other things you could summon, but at the same time, you're going to see a lot of bonuses to the summons you're already bringing to the table. So we're going to dive into those bonuses off the bat. The first one is Reaper's Pursuit. Damaging enemies with darkness skills increases your movement speed by 5%. Now, what I'm guessing this area is for when you're going for a sacrifice summon, which means you're not having any summons out, and you're really just increasing your damage because you don't have summons. So diving into the split between the two of this passive is, first one is Gloom. When you damage enemies with darkness skills, they take times 2% increased shadow damage from you and your minions for 2 seconds, stacking up 3 times. Now the next split is Crippling Darkness. Darkness skills have up to 15% chance to stun for 1 second. Sorry, that phrasing. Darkness skills deal times 5% bonus damage to enemies who are slowed, and times number percent bonus damage to enemies who are stunned or immobilized. These bonuses stack and apply to shadow damage dealt by your minion. Now I wonder if immobilize, like immobilize, would it be if they're stuck in a single spot by like bone prison? I don't think so, but I wonder. Alright, next passive. Gruesome Mending. While below 50% life, you receive plus number percent more healing from all sources. Now we're going to split, and the split is going to be kind of a weird split if you can see here, but we're going to do the first split. While healthy, your blood skills deal number percent increased damage. Now we're going to split to the other side to blood orbs also heal your minions for 15% the amount. Now these two go into another ability with Tides of Blood. Your blood skills deal 5% increase overpowered damage. This bonus is doubled while you are healthy. Once again, reminder, while healthy means above 80% life. Now the first split that I was talking about goes into Drain Vitality, which is hitting enemies with blood skills has up to 25% chance to fortify you for 1% base life. Fortify is huge, man, for melee. Now let's go into the next passive. When a corpse is formed from your skills or minions, fortify for number percent base life. Next passive, down here, your bone skills have a 0.5 increased critical strike chance for each 10 essence you have upon cast. I'm guessing that's 0.5%. Next split is for every 100 essence you spend, reduce the cooldowns of your bone skills by 0.5 seconds. Next split is after critical striking 10 times with bone skills, your bone skills deal times 6% increased damage for 5 seconds. Next one is your bone skills deals times 6 increased critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. This is really cool if you're going to be a bone mage. Alright, now for the abilities. First ability is Corpse Tendrils. Burst out of a corpse. So veins burst out of a corpse, pulling in enemies, stunning them for 3 seconds, and dealing 20% damage to them. Does not consume the corpse. That's really cool. First passive for that is enemies who are in range of the corpse tendrils are slowed by 50% before being pulled. Next we have Corpse Tendrils has a number percent chance when damaging enemies to drop a blood orb. Next we have enemies damaged by corpse tendrils are made vulnerable for a number of seconds. That's really cool. I think vulnerable, like I said, is huge, and I think this is going to be a really viable kind of thing for corpse for builds that are dealing with corpses. Next summoning skill is Bone Spirits. Consume all of your essence to conjure a spirit of bone that seeks enemies. Upon reaching the enemy, the spirit explodes, dealing 80% damage to the target and all surrounding enemies. Damage is increased by times 3% for each point of essence spent casting Bone Spirit. Next we have is Enhanced Bone Spirit. If Bone Spirit critically strikes, its cooldown is reduced by 6 seconds. This effect can only happen once per cast. The next split, which you have to choose one or the other, is after Bone Spirit hits an enemy, you generate 30 essence over the next 4 seconds. Next split is Bone Spirit has an additional plus 10% critical strike chance. It's really cool. Alright, now we're going to go for the ultimates. This is everything that everyone wants to see. And then the Capstones. Capstones are a way to really dive and specialize your area. So what level do you get your ultimate would be? So 25 is when you see your first ultimate. So we're going to go with passives and then we'll dive into the ultimate. So passive, Golem Master. Increase the damage of and life of your golem by 15%. Now it has 3 in it, so I'm guessing you can get this up to 45%, but we'll see. First passive, or next passive, is Bond in Essence. Every 15 seconds, your skeleton priest healing will heal your skeletons for number percent of your maximum life. Now the next passive is Inspiring Leader. After you have been healthy for at least number of seconds, you and your minions gain plus number of seconds and increase attack speed. Death's Defense was the next passive. Your minions cannot lose more than 50% of their maximum life from a single damage instance. That's really good for boss battles, actually. Next passive is Hellbent Commander. Your minions deal plus or times 10% increased damage while you are close to them. So this would be for like a summoning. Well, it really depends, right? If you're going for like the caster type skeletons, this would be when you're back in the back line with them casting. Or if you're going for a melee like build with your melee minions, this would be for that as well. So it really kind of goes for both ends. That's kind of cool. Next passive is Standalone. This would be obviously if you're going to, probably just based on the name before I dive into it, dive into sacrificing your minions to be yourself. So either you're casting yourself or be melee upfront yourself without minions attached with you at all. So increased damage reduction by 6%, reduced by 2% for each active minion. So yeah, I'm guessing this gets up to 18%, and then if you have, for each minion you have out there, that percentage decreased by 2% for each minion. So yes, this will be if you're gonna go for sacrificing your minions. to increase yourself. All right, so next is Memento Mori, which is really cool. I love that name. Sacrificing both skeleton warriors and skeleton mages increases your sacrifice bonus by 20%. That's, yeah, that, like I said, this is going to go into sacrificing your summon to be alone by yourself. So when do you dive into when can you dive into capstones? So capstones can be dove into at level 35. So level 35, you're able to specialize into something which really says what build you're going to be. So the first capstone, which by the way, these are passives, is going to be your bone skills deal times 1% increased damage for each point of essence you have above 50 upon cast. So when your essence is above 50, so if you have 100 essence, this is increasing the damage of your bone skills by 50%. Rathma's Vigor, increase your maximum life by times 10% after being healthy for 25 seconds. Your next blood skill overpowers. So once again, above healthy is above 80% life, and this will probably be, I don't even know, a caster ability, so you really don't want to be hit a lot. Next passive is Shadow Blight. Shadow damage infects enemies with Shadow Blight for 2 seconds. You and your minions deal times 10% bonus damage to enemies with Shadow Blight. Every 20th time an enemy receives shadow damage from you or your minions while they are affected by Shadow Blight, they take an additional % shadow damage. It's really cool. So next one is Kalan's Edict. After you have not taken damage in the last number of seconds, your minions gain plus % attack speed while you have at least number minions. This bonus is double. So that number minions, really, we don't really know what that is, but that's a really cool ability that we'd like to see. So with Book of the Dead, we're going to dive into. First, we're going to have your skeleton warriors. Now, this is how you upgrade your skeleton warriors and skeleton mages and golems. So the first upgrade you can do is you can raise an additional skirmisher, and then the sides are going to be either with your skirmisher or a sacrifice of them. So your sword wielding damage dealers that deal 30% increased damage but have 15% reduced life. So what this is you're either going to have them or sacrifice them. So your sacrifice of them increases you, and having them is what they do, right? So you're going to choose between one or the other. So for the next upgrade is going to be each time you critically strike, your skirmisher's next attack critically strikes as well. Can only happen every 3 seconds. So if you were to sacrifice your skirmishers, this would increase you, so your critical strike chance is increased by 5%, but you can no longer raise skeleton warriors. So basically, you are making it so you have less minions out there, but you are increasing yourself. So the next kind of warrior is the defenders. Now these are with the shields. So these ones are with the swords, these are with the scythes, and these are with the shield. So with the shields, every 8 seconds, your defenders negate the next instance of direct damage they would take. The upgrade for them, durable shield barriers with 15% increased life. So that's not an upgrade, that's just kind of a description of how they're different than the others. The upgrade for them is increase the amount of thorns that defenders inherit from you from 30% to 50%. This is really good. I would love to see a good Thorns build come into a Diablo game. Thorns builds are they never really hit the mark. So the first sacrifice, I guess the sacrifice for defenders would be you gain 15% non-physical resistance, but you can no longer raise skeleton warriors. So the next skeleton warrior you could have out would be the Reapers. Reapers attack against enemies who are immobilized, slow, stunned, or vulnerable, reduce the cooldown of their powerful wind-up attack by 2 seconds. The upgrade for the skeleton Reapers would be Reapers have a 10% chance to carve the flesh off enemies, forming a corpse. This cannot happen at the same enemy more than once every 5 seconds. A description of the Reapers would be deals area damage. So these would be direct damage, defenders, area damage. So deals area damage with a slow and powerful scythe, and has special wind-up attack dealing heavy damage every 10 seconds. So you would if they're attacking something that's slowed or vulnerable or immobilized or stunned, this reduces that by 2 seconds. So I would see really them casting this ability every probably 4 to 5 seconds. Now the sacrifice for the Reapers would be, if you sacrifice the Reapers, you no longer can cast the Reapers. You deal times 10% increase shadow damage, but you no longer can raise skeleton warriors. So actually what these sacrifices are is you would sacrifice all of them, and you actually couldn't cast any of them at all. So you really just kind of dive down this whole side. Now, the skeleton mages. The first skeleton mage is going to be the shadow mages. Shadow mages attack have a 10% chance to stun for 2.13 seconds. This cannot happen at the same enemy more than once every 5 seconds. Shadow mages deal moderate shadow damage. Now, the first upgrade for shadow mages is shadow mages fire an additional shadow bolt every 6th attack. Now, if you were to sacrifice shadow mages if the sacrifice for shadow mages is your maximum essence is increased by 15, but you can no longer raise skeleton mages. The next one would be cold mages, which, this will really go good with the reapers, right? Cold. Each time your cold mages damage enemies with their primary attack, you gain 2 essence. Obviously, cold mages chills and freezes enemies. And then the upgrade for cold mages is enemies who are frozen by and damaged while frozen. Enemies who are frozen by or damaged while frozen by a cold mage, primary attacks are made vulnerable for 3 seconds. Now, the sacrifice for the cold mages are you deal times 15% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, but you can no longer raise skeleton mages. The next one, mage, is going to be bone mages. The bone mages uses its own bones as projectiles, dealing heavy damage for a life cost. It's really interesting, actually. I would love to see how the animation of that works. So the upgrade for that is reduce the life cost of your bone mages attacks from 15% to 10%. After being alive for 5 seconds, bone mages deal 40% increased damage. That's really cool. The next upgrade for them is each time a bone mage dies from its own attack, they leave behind a corpse and fortify you for number. That's really cool. So what this kind of build would be, you'd probably sacrifice just thinking of like theory cards, you'd sacrifice the warriors to make yourself a frontline, but then you would still raise your skeleton mages as your backline, and you would be the tank. And so this area of like fortifying you would be really cool. All right, so to sacrifice them, your overpower damage is increased by 30%, but you can no longer raise skeleton mages. Next, we're going to go into golem. The first golem is the bone golem, taunts enemies in a wide area. So the first upgrade for the bone golem is each time your golem takes up to 20% of its maximum life and damage, it sheds a corpse. The next upgrade is your golem gains 10% maximum life, and the amount of thorns they inherit from you is increased from 30% to 50%. Now, the first sacrifice for them is you gain 10% increased attack speed, but you lose the ability to summon the golem. Next golem is the blood golem. Blood golem drains life from nearby enemies. The first upgrade for the blood golem is your blood golem absorbs 15% of the damage you take. The next upgrade is while healthy, your golem gains 25% damage reduction and 25% increased damage. The sacrifice for them would be your maximum life is increased by 10%, but you lose the ability to summon the golem. The next golem is the iron golem. Slams the ground and stuns enemies. Every 5th golem attack causes a shockwave, dealing 16% damage to the primary enemy and the enemies behind them. The next upgrade is your golem slam attack also makes enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. Now, if you were to sacrifice the iron golem, you deal 30% increased critical strike damage, but you lose the ability to summon the golem. So overall, you guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it helps you guys kind of decide if the Necromancer is the route you want to go, and maybe start theory crafting. Obviously, everything here is subject to change as far as numbers, abilities, or anything like that, or where the abilities are. So please take that with a grain of salt, as the game isn't fully released right now. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and hopefully you guys like and subscribe, and tell me down below what kind of Necromancer build you would love to see based on these skills that I told you about.